In order to create business value, you have to create customer value. If we don't understand what it is that's going to resonate with them, they're just going to say, I'm sorry, I don't have time for you right now. Get a customer advisory board, because you can then talk to customers on a regular basis because they're engaging with you. Don't start with your data, start with your question. I find a lot of people will just get into the data and they're just looking at it, and there's cool stuff to look at, but that will take you down rabbit holes. You can't replace a content person with AI because you're going to get junk AI. But that doesn't mean you can't get some ideas about content that you then might have some expertise on that you might write. You cannot come into a job as a marketer and not understand how AI can be a tool. If you fell down, let me see, oh, you're not bleeding, it's not broken, get on with your business. You probably heard that old saying, you should buy our product. Why should you buy our product? Because our product's cool. To grow, you have to be something other than just cool.
So to begin with, how did selling chocolates at age 9 shape your career path?
What I think is important to understand is many people that are probably in your community did things when they were young that had an impact on what and lessons learned. So I come from an era where money was very tight. And so we didn't get allowances or doled out money. So if we wanted to make money, we had to be somewhat entrepreneurial, whether that was raking leaves or shoveling snow. I bet you guys are familiar with that up there, or whatever it might be. And one of the things I did was sell world's finest chocolate starting at age 9. And that's still a brand that's around today if people want to look it up. But what I learned in those early years is that in order to create business value, you have to create customer value, right? If you can't speak to the customer and give them value, you're not going to get the business. And I think that's true. And that was sort of the primary message I learned, is how do you structure your conversation with existing customers and prospective customers so that you have clarity around the problem they're trying to solve or the opportunity they're trying to seize, so you create value for them with the solution that you're bringing to the table. I think it's really easy for all of us to want to talk about the things we're selling, right? And push what we're selling. Of course, I want to sell too. But if we don't understand what it is that's going to resonate with them, they're just going to say, I'm sorry, I don't have time for you right now, which is what I do to all those LinkedIn requests that come in. Do you get those, David and Becky? Do you get all those LinkedIn requests where they're pitching something and they have no idea whether or not that's something I need? That's what people will do if they don't think about what is the problem or the opportunity.
You've transitioned from marketing leadership roles at Motorola to founding Vision Edge Marketing. What drove you to take that leap in 1999?
If you have to know a little bit about Austin, I came to Austin in 82. So I have been here several decades. And it was a very different town in 1982, as you can imagine. Only like 250,000 people in the entire metro area. Now we're, like over 1 million people. So that's a lot of growth. And so some of that growth was happening as a result of things in the 80s, which were MCC and Semitech had come to town. And that allowed a lot of companies to become sort of emerge. So we had all these companies spinning out of these entities. And so in 1999, if you could spell marketing, you could get a job. and so being here,
the good old days.
Yeah. So if you were here a while, your phone was ringing and my phone was ringing. I was working at that point in time for an enterprise application software company. And so there was a lot of software companies emerging like mushrooms in Austin. And I just had a friend who's also said, is your phone ringing like my phone's ringing? And I said, yes. He said, oh, this might be a great time to start our own firm. I mean, we can just convert all these people into our customers. And that's exactly what we did. So we jumped from the frying pan into the fire and started our own company.
So I'm really interested. The fact that Austin has grown by, it sounds like, more than 4 times in not a very big period. We've also had the dot-com bubble, multiple recessions, may well be starting a new one now, who knows? What would you say, going through all those changes and navigating your way through it, what are the personal qualities or personal tools maybe that you've used to help you in business navigate through that?
That's a great question, Becky, because right after we started, right in 1999, 2001 came. Not only did it come with the dot-com bust, but you might remember that terrible day on 9/11, which basically the world went completely quiet on that day. It was, at least in the United States. There was a one and only time. I actually had a meeting that day, just to share with you, and I couldn't reach the person that I needed to meet with to change our meeting because no one wanted to meet with me. I got in my car and I drove 25 miles to the meeting and there was no traffic. To go to the meeting where he was actually in his office, where I said to him, I just wanted to let you know that I realize today is not a good day to meet. And I will reschedule when you're ready to have a conversation. But I didn't want you to think I was just blowing you off. Right. And then I got back in my car and I drove back to my office. So it was an eerie day. And at that same time, shortly thereafter, my partner, as a wife, came down with a very aggressive form of breast cancer. And so he bowed out of the company in order to do and take care of his wife. And so to those people who are facing those kinds of challenges, whether it's a recession like that, and we've had several of those in the last 25 years, you have to make, it's really about your commitment to your customers. And, having the discipline to keep going, the persistence and the grit and the resilience. These are personal qualities. And those come from life experiences, right? And, I have to give a lot of credit to my mother. And I'm going to just say that for those of you who had tough parents, I had a very tough parents. And my mother was the kind of a mother that if you fell down and there was like no crying, there's no crying. Let me see. Oh, you're not bleeding. It's not broken. Get on with your business, right? Well, you kind of have to be that way as an entrepreneur. And I know that's tough love, but if you don't have that grit to get back up, you're going to just, falter. I'm not saying you don't have a bad day, but you got to be willing to get, okay, I'm out today, but I'm going to be back at it tomorrow. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, essentially it's the grit and the resilience to keep going, keep pushing through whatever it is that knocks you down.
Yes. And great customers. Our customers have been, some of them have turned into friends over the years. If you have good customers and good customer relationships, they will help you through those tough times. It may not be easy for anybody, but they will help you. And I have to say, we've had customers who've gone out of business in the last 25 years for various reasons. We have never, ever been stiffed by a customer, ever. We are blessed.
Let's speak to your character.
We have great relationships with customers.
You developed Excellence, a patented SaaS app designed to improve planning and performance management. What inspired this innovation and how has it transformed the way companies grow?
Quick story at Motorola, just a very quick story. I worked at Motorola, and shortly after my joining this group, there was a big reorg. And the person who had been and had brought me on board left the company, and a new person who became really a mentor for me for the next 11 years out of my 14-year career took the helm. And at Motorola, this is the old days, guys, long before there was technology. Do you remember those things called those plastic sheets? We called those foils that you put on an overhead projector. Does anybody remember those? Oh, yeah, that's like, right? We would bring a deck, right? The PowerPoint replaced all those. You would bring a deck to the ops review with your foils. And I was one of those people who would be responsible for reporting to this man. And there's an old saying at Motorola, if your foils aren't going up, neither are you. So shortly after he came on board, I got invited to sit in the peanut gallery when he was making a presentation. You turned your foils in, and he would take from the collection of foils and cherry pick out of those what he was going to use. And then that's what it would be. And then his boss would take all those foils. That's what they meant by going up. So I'm in the peanut gallery, and shortly after the peanut gallery ended and I left, I realized that not a single one of my foils was in his deck. I'm running marketing. Not a single one of his foils is in his deck. And so later that day, when he comes whipping around the corner by my office and stops in to ask me to do something, I look at him and I say, Gary, I noticed that none of my foils were in your deck. What could I give you that would be more helpful? And he said to me, what is your job? And I actually thought that was the end. and then he just jumped in. He said, look, I know you're not in sales, but your job is to create conversations for existing and prospective customers. Your job is to get them to want to trial our products, sample our products, get our design boards, get our evaluation boards. If you're not telling me how you're doing that, then I don't know what you're doing. So this, you're wondering, what does this have to do with excellence? So I learned very quickly that I had to find a way to show what I was doing and the money I was spending, which was a lot of money, what I was doing and the money I was spending, and how it connected to the things that mattered to him, and how those things then connected to what mattered to the organization, which was ultimately chip sales, right? That is the basis of excellence. When I founded Vision Edge Marketing, one of the things many people would ask is, how do we know what we're doing if it's making a difference? And so we tried to help build plans that allowed them to do that. And there was no technology. We tried Excel and PowerPoint and Word and various other things. Now we're talking, way back when. There are some applications now, but still not very good. And so we ended up creating our own. And that is what excellence does, is it allows people to visually see the connection between the money and the activity and the results, be able to put in their measures and begin to frame up the chain that shows how it's making a difference, and to organize their money by outcomes. So if you're in a company, you're probably familiar with the notion of sub-accounts, right? And in every, that's great for accounting purposes, but that doesn't really help you show how the value of that money connects to a result. And so we try to address that in excellence. Did that answer your question, David?
It did. And your story there with the foils, I think, is interesting because I saw the Hunt for Red October a little while back, and I realized overhead projectors, I remember those. And it's just interesting how there's these truths that transcend technology and different kind of cultures or generations. And so being able to look through the noise to those true constants, I think is important, and I can see you kind of doing that in your story there. So thank you for sharing that with us. In my MBA class during the pandemic, we were reading a case study from I think 2007, and there was a complaint in the class saying, "Why are we reading? It's like 2022, or why are we reading a case study from 2007?" And it's like, the truth is truth. Whether we're still studying Aristotle and Plato. It's like once you discover something meaningful, it doesn't expire because of a couple calendar years. So I think it's important not to, to be open to learning where you can.
Yes, lessons learned, right? And sharing those lessons and passing those lessons on. So, I mean, yeah, it's great that we all get to experience our failures, right? And have those moments. But if we can avoid some of those really painful ones, that's a good thing in business.
I think that's the thing with business, isn't it? Is that we have our own failures, we have our own learnings, we pass that on, sometimes in the form of a business that can then help our customers to avoid those same problems or get to their win quicker. And I know that's something you really focus on, is helping customers win.
Yes. So I'm a big proponent of the famous phrase from Peter Drucker. The purpose of business is to create a customer. It's right. That is the purpose of business. You probably studied that, right, David, in your MBA class.
Yes. Yeah.
And I always tell my people, there's nothing more important. Customers first, because that's why we're here. There's no other reason to be here. So if we're not helping them win, if we don't understand what is success for them, then we are failing. That's basically a pretty simple message. And I think for a lot of people, it's easy to forget that that's the primary reason we are here. There's no other reason. So I always ask people when I'm in a program where I'm have the opportunity to have conversations about the concept of customer centricity, I'll ask them, do you know what success is for your customers? Because if you don't know what success is for your customers, that's kind of an important question, right? So that's the starting point. And then, do you know how they expect you to help them achieve that? That's like the second question. You don't need to just start with the basics of those two answers to those two questions, and they can really be illuminating.
So would you say those are very often overlooked elements of being customer centric? It's what does success look like, and how do they expect you to get there?
Yes, I think it is. I think, again, I'm in the B2B world, so that's a very different world for a lot of people. Most of our customers have complex products that require a consultative sell. They're typically big decisions that a company's, they're big investments. It's not like buying a chocolate bar on your way out of the grocery line, right, to the checkout, where, okay, if I didn't like it, I'll just won't buy it again. It's kind of a little bit different kind of decision making in the world that we live in. And so you have to really start with that basic question. But the challenge you have in those industries is that you can become very enamored with your products because they are cool, right? And you probably heard that old saying, you should buy our product. Why should you buy our product? Because our product's cool, right? And you can get away with that. Maybe you can get away with that for a while, but then to grow, and you have to be something other than just cool. Maybe Apple can get away with that for a lot longer. I don't know. We'll see.
I was going to say, it comes back to what you said at the very start. So my background, Laura, is in sales training, and I'm very big on understand the problems, understand why somebody would even care about what you do before you ever talk to them about what you do. And you said about the LinkedIn messages coming in. How would you, or what are some practical ways you think that companies can understand more about their customers? Surveys, questions, how would you go about that?
Well, that's a great question, Becky. And one of the things I have believed very strongly in is get a customer advisory board, because that's something every company that can do, because you can then talk to customers on a regular basis because they're engaging with you. Create some questions that you can ask customers on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be this expensive research, although I would love for people to contact me about doing expensive research, because we do that, whether that's focus groups or in-depth interviews or surveys. But there are very inexpensive things that people can do. Inexpensive things people can do again, back in the B2B world. Trade shows are back. Conferences are back. Here's another thing that I would suggest. I always ask people, what are the 3 to 5 business decisions you need to make right now in order to achieve success in whatever time horizon you're working on? What is it that you need to know to make those decisions? Of the things that you need to know, which things do you think you do know that you need to validate? And which things that you don't know? And what information do you need or data do you need to get the answer to what you don't know, right? Pretty simple. Again, it seems very simple, but you'd be surprised. So when you figure out what you don't know and what you need to know, if you can't get that from the information already at your fingertips, where are you going to get it? Well, you can get it from a customer advisory board. You can insert some questions. For example, at your trade show, here's the 5 or 6 questions we want to ask people that we're going to meet with. Those that are our customers, we might set up lunches or breakfast or other meetings or even a dinner to find out, kind of like a quasi focus group, right? Or an in-depth interview, or at your booth, or as you're walking around. The key is to ask the question the same way every single time, because if you change the way the question is phrased, then that can have implications to the result that you get. And then just bring that back and see what you're learning, right? And if you do that over and over again, you can begin to see if there's any patterns in those answers, right? That can help you with making that decision. If the decision is urgent, that's the beauty of a customer advisory board, because they are already committed to helping you be successful.
You brought up some great advice there, Laura. Now, Fast Track Your Business, your latest book, lays out a customer-centric growth approach. What's one actionable insight that businesses should adopt immediately?
Well, the very first So Fast Track Your Business, and thanks for bringing that up, David, outlines what we call our circle of traction, which is a framework for growth that we've been using with our customers a long time. In fact, Fast Track Your Business is a result of a customer who said, will you ever put that framework in a book? And my answer to him was no. I've already done 3 books. I don't have time for a book. And he said, I hope you will rethink that answer. So that is how Fast Track got created. And so it's a wheel. If you know, it's a circle, it's a wheel. And the first part of the wheel, what we call the node, is customer insights, right? So customer centricity really isn't about catering to every customer's whim. It's not about just doing random things. It's about really having insights into your customers so that you can make good decisions about how you're going to run your company, about how you're going to run your company. So customer centricity is about the way you run your company, the decisions you're going to make, the way you're going to operate. So if you can start there, right, with the customer, and a lot of people have good ideas and they're solving a problem that they have. Here's a simple thing, right? Here's a good example. I'm on the hunt for a wallet for my husband for his birthday. And as you can, David, you can probably relate to this. We don't have the luxury, Becky, of having pockets for our wallets. So we have to lug around a whole extra accessory for our wallets. But men have these great pockets that, whether it's their suit coat or their pants, they can put wallets in. But these wallets tend to be kind of bulky and they can be hard to sit on. And if you're traveling, they're really hard to put in your front pocket if you want to protect them, right? So people have had this problem and they've solved that problem by creating these slim pocket wallets, right? Do you have one, David?
I've got like 3 wallets right here in my drawer.
Okay, right. So people came up, recognized this problem, and they created a product. So now I am trying to sift through all the various companies who are now competing with slim wallets, right? Now, most of the time, men don't buy their wallets, right? Their wives, their girlfriends, their children. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my father got a wallet in his lifetime for Father's Day, right? All right. So I'm trying to sift through, but who are they talking to? They're not talking to me, and I'm one of the primary buyers. They're talking to men. And that's great, but Mark is not going to go out and buy this wallet. I am trying to buy this wallet, and I am really struggling with figuring out the compelling differentiation and positioning because they haven't really thought about who the real buyer is going to be or who a primary buyer is going to be. It's not just men, right? So I have no idea. So I finally just said to Mark, I want to buy you one of these wallets. And I've got like 5 different companies that have these wallets. Can I show them to you? Tell me which one you want. Because I don't get it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that.
But it did solve a problem because whoever designed those wallets, which I suspect are men, they had the problem. And so now they did a good job of understanding one thing, but they didn't understand the rest of the buyers and that buying journey.
Yeah. Sometimes you can have like almost all the ingredients, but missing that crucial layer that puts it all together.
So did you buy your wallets or were they gifts?
2 I bought for myself over the years, and one was a gift. I also I'm somewhat minimalist in my possessions. I watched Heat in my youth, and there's a line by De Niro that just resonated with me. It's like, when you spot the heat coming around the corner, be ready to drop everything in 30 seconds or something. Now, I don't live quite like that, but something about it kind of put my mind, like, try not to be like weighed down by like a bunch of possessions. But like I have some, I don't know, compromises, and watches and wallets are some of those where I kind of indulge. So you've been recognized as one of the top women in MarTech and as a top influencer. How do you hope to influence the future of marketing and customer strategy?
So for the last 20 years, we have had a pretty formal internship program inside our company for young people that are in college. So I have approximately 60 some odd interns, so usually about 2 or 3 a year, that have gone through our internship initiative. They don't interface with customers, but they learn about marketing by doing marketing things. And it's pretty interesting to see how different the interns of today are from the interns of 20 years ago. They are very different.
What's one big difference you've noticed?
problem solving skills, critical thinking skills, perseverance skills. They're big differences. Really, initiative, four initiative, taking initiative are really, really different.
Are you seeing a trend in like positive changes, or is it negative, or is it a trade off?
They are wicked smart, young people today, really, really smart. But the ones that we've had, they tend to quit if it's hard. I don't mean quit the company, just stop and just are stuck. They get stuck and they don't really know how to get unstuck unless you help them get unstuck. That's an experience we're having. I'm not sure that that's necessarily, everybody. Just seems to be an experience that we've had, and they're much more easily distracted, and also going down rabbit holes. More of that today than maybe 20 years ago. And maybe that has something to do with school, or I don't know what it might have to do with it, but these are just observations us more senior people have made of the more younger people that we have worked with. But we have believed and believe very strongly that in order for the discipline of marketing to continue on as a discipline with a capital M, I don't mean demand gen, I don't mean lead gen, I mean true marketing, strategic marketing, product marketing, upstream marketing, positioning, messaging, differentiation, all the things that come that are critical before you ever try to go write an email campaign, right? We need people who have the talent and skills to do that. They need to be able to have the analytical skills to do that today. The amount of data that all of us have access to today is mind-blowing. In fact, I think we were able to make better decisions with less data 30 years ago because of various reasons. I think today there's a lot of people overwhelmed by the amount of data and they don't know what to do with it. I have a suggestion for that. Would you like a suggestion?
Sure.
Don't start with your data. Start with your question. What is the question you have that you need an answer to? I find a lot of people just get into the data and they're just looking at it, and there's cool stuff to look at, but that will take you down rabbit holes. What is the question that you need the answer to? Then figure out what kind of data that you need to have.
Something I've observed is perhaps the optionality. I think things are largely trade-offs. And so with the optionality comes confusion. Before I just wanted meat. Now you presented me with 60 types of meat. I don't know which type of meat I want now. It's great that I have so much freedom of choice between meats, but it's almost like too much. So I really like your point there, Laura, with focus on the question, like, what do I want? Am I making a hamburger? Am I making whatever? And it's like, you narrow it down, you focus it, and then exercising restraint. Like I could keep searching the internet or going down rabbit holes, like you said, but exercise restraint. I answered my question, good enough for today anyway. Now it's on to the next. And you're always going to leave something on the table. But if you are intentional with like, okay, I had 8 hours today. How did I spend them? What do I want to do differently tomorrow? I think you can iterate just like yourself as the product, if you will. Your life is the product. Iterate and hopefully get to a better ratio for you. Yeah, it's never going to be a perfect, like, oh, I captured all of everything out there always. It's, so it's making the best decisions you can.
I totally agree with you. In fact, I'm an avid proponent of iteration, and I think perfection is an enemy in many ways to all kinds of things. So for those people who can't help themselves, there's a point. I mean, there are certain things that need to be right? You obviously don't want to put something out that's grammatically incorrect or statistically incorrect. That needs to be correct. But correct and perfect are not necessarily the same thing. So iteration is okay, and it's okay to go down a path for a decision. And if you have experience with decision trees, which I hope our listeners do understand the concept of a decision tree, then where you get to a place with a yes or a no, you can come back, you can change your mind. It's okay to change your mind, but if you get new information, right? So you get new information, you learn something else, and then you can make a change. And so that's okay. One moment you're doing X, maybe next month you'll do Y because something happened between X and Y that requires you to to pivot.
I wonder, because we're talking about data, analyzing data, making decisions, and also how things have been changing. Where do you think, Laura, that AI has an impact here now, and where that might go in the world of marketing?
Okay, I cannot tell you. You cannot go to the grocery store in Austin without a conversation about AI. So I seem to be in those conversations a lot, and I am a proponent of AI. And you got to be careful how you use it. Obviously, I'm going to be doing a program on confirmation bias in AI, because I think a lot of people are doing research through AI and don't realize that in some ways they are compromising their results because they don't understand how AI works, right? AI is a machine that has been trained on data that was given to it by a human, and humans come with a filter and a bias. So when you put that information in there, you have to understand that your answers are going to come with whatever that bias is. So you have to be very, very careful about what you do with AI. So I think it's a tool. We need to look at it like a tool. And that means that we have to understand when is the right time to use a tool. Okay, another story about tools very quickly, because I do a lot in the space of MarTech, and we have a lot of MarTech in our company. My father, people have heard this story. The story is actually on our website somewhere. So my father was quite a handyman. That's not what he did. He was a cartographer, actually, but he did do a lot of handy at-home work projects. So he had a great work room with all these amazing tools. So I was quite young when I got my first toolbox and toolkits. And I love, and still to this day, love to go to the hardware store. Of course, today that's all big boxes, right? Like Home Depot and Lowe's. But when I was a child, those were neighborhood stores. We would go to the hardware store. And back then, you just wandered around because people didn't worry about the things that people worry about today. And so they knew us. My father would make, regular trips to the hardware store for one thing or another. And I would go meandering around, just enthralled by all the tools. And one day I see this, I'm probably 5 or 6 years old in the story. I see this tool. It's very cool. And I managed to get my father's attention to show it to him. And I say to him, we don't have this one. We need this one, right? It's got to remember, I'm 5 or 6. The conversation is pretty different when you're only 5 or 6. And my father says,
That hasn't changed for me. I'm still like that.
okay, all right, back to a cool tool. And my father says, oh, that is a very cool tool. And it was a bandsaw. And he said, do you know what this tool does? And I said, no, but I like it. And he said, well, here's the thing about tools. If you don't understand what the tool does and you don't have the skill set to use the tool, if you use the tool, you will only be able to do more damage faster. And I think that's where we are. We have to be careful about the fact that we have a fascinating tool we're all enamored with. We have to be careful that we're not doing more damage faster. And here is an example of the damage that's being done right now that people are talking about. All the junk content that people are having AI write that they are posting. Right? And even though they might look at it or whatnot, they're posting this content. Well, Google's getting pretty smart, and Google's still the #1 search engine. And so Google's creating an algorithm to detect AI written content. And if you have AI written content, you're going to get dinged. So that's going to affect your search and people finding you. So I don't know if I'm really answering the question, Becky, but this is what's going on. So people need to understand and have the skill set. You can't replace a content person with AI because you're going to get junk AI. But that doesn't mean you can't get some ideas about content that you then might have some expertise on that you might write. And it doesn't mean then that you might write that content and then ask the AI, for example, here's something I do. I know that I have a tendency to write in passive voice. And I have a great copy editor who helps me fix that. But to help make her load a little easier, I'll put my content I'm using a product called Cintra.ai. I have no relationship with the company. It's just something that I've been experimenting with. Our company's been experimenting with a platform because seemed like a good platform for an SMB, whereas like a product like Jasper seems like it's an enterprise level product. So we wanted to find something that would work for our size company. And I will put my content into the AI helper because it's a very cool product. And I'll say, Pen, because it has a name, Pen, I know I'm very prone to these passive voice verbs. Could you go through my copy and see where there are opportunities to create an active verb? That is an example where the tool can be helpful. So I want, not create my copy because it's my copy. I want it to be my voice. I want it to be my thoughts. But I can use it to help me make my passive voice to active voice. So that's an example. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's using the tool, like you said about the example with your dad in a hardware store, that know what the tool does, know how to use it, but ultimately a tool is nothing and can cause more damage if the human doesn't know what they're doing. So it's an addition.
I'd asked the tool to write the copy. I don't know what I would have gotten, right? So we have to beware. So young people who are coming into the workforce, I know people are very concerned about whether their jobs are going to be taken away because of AI, particularly marketing people. I don't think that's happening right now, but you need to know how to use the tool right now. Those who know how to use the tool properly will be more successful, just like those who know how to use email platforms or knew how to do and create websites, right? You have to understand how those things work or how to use a CRM system. So same thing, right, Becky? Same thing. You have to know how to use it. So you cannot come into a job as a marketer and not understand how AI can be a tool. You have to know how to do it. You have to know how to use, just like you would have to know how to use a social media platform, whether that's Hootsuite or Sprout or whatever. But in the future, I do think that you'll have some roles becoming more challenging. So, for example, here's how we do use AI in a way that I still have some concerns about. We have no graphic designers in our company, and I am a horrible artist. So we let the AI make our images for us. We tell the AI what images we want, and that way we get it. I think that's affecting what we, instead of us hiring our graphic designer and asking the graphic designer to do that now, we just let the AI generate images. Cheaper, faster, good enough. So I think if I were a graphic designer, I would be thinking about how am I going to differentiate myself so that I'm not put out of a job.
Be interesting to see how things evolve.
Yes, they are very interesting how things evolve. Sometimes, so if I were starting a business over today, I probably would start a very different business because the world has changed to 25 years later.
Got some rapid fire questions for you, Laura, as we close our interview.
Oh, these weren't the rapid fire questions?
Data analytics or creative marketing campaigns?
Well, you're talking to a data scientist, so I'm going to say data analytics.
Your favorite way to recharge after a tough day?
Oh, so I spent a lot of years as a competitive triathlete, amateur. So runs are a big part of my routine. I love being on a track because I can go in circles and not worry about traffic, and my brain can just turn off.
Best advice you ever received in business?
Okay, that's a great question. One of our board of advisors on our board, who has passed away, had a phrase that I still hear her say to me every time I'm trying to do something, and it was, only do what only you can do.
A marketing buzzword you wish would disappear forever?
MQLs.
And where can people follow you, and where would you like to point them to keep up with you, what you're doing?
I am on LinkedIn. So I'm always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. You can always reach out to me at Vision Edge Marketing. My email is Laura P, first name, last initial, at visionedgemarketing.com. Those are two great ways to connect with me.
Thank you for talking to us today. You shared a lot of really interesting anecdotes, and exciting to put some of what you showed us to practice. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Great to speak with you both. Thank you both. Becky and David.